welcome to a special edition of the Breakaway. I know you're used to seeing us sitting at a table with Cam and his very unimpressive moustache and the wonderful Sarah. But today we have an extremely special guest, Reece McDonald from Science to Sport. Reece is a partner at Science to Sport. He's been there for 9 years. The big 10-year anniversary celebration next year, which we'll be looking forward to the invite for. Reece, thanks for joining me again.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well done on that sub 10 this morning. Those were being dished out left, right, and center. It felt like an Oprah session this morning.
Yeah, I was there.
You get a sub 10. You get a sub 10.
I think everyone definitely got the taste of the Oprah Winfrey show at the top of Chappies today. It was fun though. Good vibes.
It was a good morning. Reece, you're going to help me unpack two things today. We'll separate them in two different videos, or we'll condense them into one. We'll see how long it flows. But we spoke anecdotally, just in passing on a ride, about I'm an enthusiast. I'm not scientific at all, but I train, I would say, an above average amount in terms of my investments into cycling, nutrition. I've coached with you before. So I represent the average punter to the enthusiast, but I'm by no means trained, certified, and I've never really lent heavily into like the nerd out data on anything, heat adaptation, carbs, all that kind of stuff, nutrition, kind of like know enough because I've lent on you. But we were speaking the other day about heat adaptation because I was just amazed hearing from someone we know who was at a WorldTour team's training camp, and they had done this. You just explained like how nuts their training is, and it's like 8 hours out on the road, and then came back and did this heat adaptation training where they were like in a heated room and finished off with an hour. I'm just like, that's insane. Posed the question to Reece, like how would you simulate heat adaptation training if you're not if you're not a WorldTour team and you have a sauna at your beck and call with a trainer in it, which just sounds weird to me. And you mentioned, well, you can just go to the sauna, specifically the sauna, not the steam room, which is one of the questions we'll get into. And you can simulate that, go and do 40 plus minutes in there and your hemoglobin, blah, blah, blah. And from then till now, I've done it. So my rest days, because Cannes rides and I take off, is like Monday, Wednesday, and sometimes a Friday. So now instead of doing nothing, I'm going to the gym. I've done these 40 to 50 minute steam sauna sessions over the last 2-3 weeks. I feel better than I ever have. That Twitter PPA this last weekend, I don't know if this is complete, what is the word I'm looking for?
Coincidence, maybe.
Coincidence or placebo effect. So Reece is kind enough to oblige and come and speak to me a little bit about this heat adaptation thing and what some of the science is behind it, because I swear I feel better. So do you want to maybe just a very long introduction?
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind, in as simple a sentence as possible, kind of like positioning heat adaptation, heat training, like what is the umbrella term for it?
So yeah, I mean, like heat acclimation, which is what you're doing, which is artificial. So you get two branches of heat. You get acclimatization and acclimation, all right? So acclimatization is the natural exposure via riding in the warmer conditions, all right? So you go ride in midday or you end your ride in the heat, so basically just being in summer, for example, versus winter. Acclimation is the artificial exposure to create a potent heat stress to improve your systems involved so that when you go into the heat, you basically have more of what you need to handle the higher temperature to cool down. Okay. So that's basically the two different sides of it. There's different ways you can acclimate, and it's passive or active, all right? So active is when you ride indoors and you artificially raise the core temperature. Core temperature is important. 38.5 degrees is kind of the number, but it's actually very difficult to measure incredibly accurately. I would say the most important thing is cardiac drift and sweat rate. If you're sweating a lot, that's a good response. Obviously, too much isn't good. So, I mean, you build up your tolerance, and this is just like
literally just observing your sweat.
Yeah, just weighing yourself before and after, tracking sweat rate, making sure you're sweating enough. For example, like a 2 to 3% loss in body mass is a good number. Obviously, it's individual. But I mean, my colleague, Mike Posthumus, he's done quite a bit of work with temperature sensors and like typically a 15 to 20 beat drift from your regular heart rate at a specific power, for example, 60% of FTP, is a very good correlate with 38.5 degrees core temperature.
So if I normally ride at 200 watts, not in the heat, at a heart rate of 120, if there's what are you saying, 15%?
15 to 20 beats per minute.
So if I'm higher than that number at the same power by 15 to 20 beats through heat related.
So yeah, if you're doing indoor
then
session,
you know that you're pretty much in that.
Yeah, so if you're doing an indoor session and you are at 140 beats per minute at 200, then you know you're probably in the right ballpark. And then you want to modulate the power to keep the heart rate stable for X duration, for example, 40 to 50 minutes. Obviously, you can build up tolerance. Then there's the passive side, which is either hot baths or sauna, sitting, so basically inducing sweat rate without moving, passive.
Okay.
All right, so that's what I suggested you do. I think passive is probably the easiest way to do it and the least unpleasant way. I mean, saunas can be unpleasant, but it's actually quite therapeutic, I think. Sitting there with no tech, learning to handle the difficulty of sitting there for more than 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. The time, the clock ticks slowly. The little sand grains drop slowly. That thing, and then people are talking about ecos and everything there, and everyone's a health expert. So it's quite a mental training. I think there's a good mental component to heat training as well. Like putting yourself in a very difficult environment for a short space of time, I think for a lot of people can actually add mental resilience. So those are kind of like the two ways you can go. One is more equipment, like sort of time, or like, you need a heat suit or typically a lot of layers, and like indoor can be, or active can be pretty unpleasant, like it's not very fun. You need an indoor trainer, like if you only have one bike, like you don't want to destroy it with sweat, like, so I'd say passive is probably easiest for most individuals, and it is effective. Same with hot baths, as I said. But obviously your water bill might stack up, and given the current water crisis or potential water crisis in Cape Town, maybe not advised, but yeah.
So those are the two, that's a very nice framing of what they are and the two different methodologies. Thank you. How new is this? Because it feels like it's major buzz terminology at the moment. I'm not exposed to the WorldTour. Obviously your Science to Sport as a business is involved at a Red Bull, Bora, Performance, UAE. You guys are operating at the absolute top end. If I'm not mistaken, you're involved with the Mbuko team, arguably the highest performing local mountain bike team. So there's
Mike's also with Specialized International on the off-road side. So there's performance there. So.
This is, you guys are uniquely exposed, not recently, for many years, which I don't think everyone knows, but you guys have had this exposure to WorldTour top level for a very long period of time. So when I asked the question, how long has this been going on? I don't know how truthful you can be. If well, actually they've been doing this for 20 years already. But is it, as far as just from like a trend point of view, how new is this? How new is the science? How new is the papers, the medical journals, the investigations into this? Because to me, and anecdotally from other people's point of view, it seems like it's the current fad, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, I think there are two branches to that. The first is, heat analysis studies have been around for over, 2 decades at least. You can date papers back pretty far. So I think it's nothing new, because obviously, core temperature is a huge limiter in performance. If you overheat, you slow down. Your body is not going to become a rest, like a well done steak. Like your body it's part of a regulatory mechanism to protect yourself. So keeping core temperature lower will mean that you can perform better for longer, or not passing that point where your core temperature is elevated above like a physiological homeostasis level. Makes sense. So if you're unable to cool down, your systems start to drift because you're cooling down more and more. Your body basically becomes desperate to cool down. It'll either slow down, or you'll go slower, so or you'll roll over. So I think heat training has been around for a long time, and I think with certain, I can't really speak in the professional sense too much, but I think access to information is definitely increasing. So that's what we're seeing, social media content and stuff like that. But I think people are trying to find new ways to get better. And a lot of races, for example, like Tokyo, a lot of events are happening in different environmental conditions these days. And people are realizing, well, like when I go to 40 degrees, I feel awful, so how do I prep for that? And then I think that's kind of where it's come about.
Teddy did that on quite a big stage, and he famously lost the Tour de France. And he, at least, again, anecdotal media reports, he chalked a lot of that off to, he hadn't...
Apparently he's never used
the heat very well.
Yeah, he wasn't very good in the heat, and I think obviously he's worked on that and improved his tolerance in the heat. And I think there's a few ways you could probably do that, especially at that level where you have access to team cars and unlimited budget and those sort of things. I think for most people, it's pretty difficult in a race to get enough fluids, to get ice, to get cooling, to have access to more advanced technology to measure core temperature. Like you can swallow a pill which measures your core temperature, but they're pretty expensive, and then you pop it out the rear end. But for average person to do that and test and check all these things in training with so many life variables and variables around their training, it's very difficult to come to big conclusions, I would say. Obviously, these elite athletes are incredibly well-trained specimens, so there's less variability and you can kind of make better deductions from what's going on.
Okay.
And then I think the biggest hit that's coming around now is the fact that heat training has a cross-pollination or basically crossover with potential altitude benefits. So elite athletes are using it to try and maintain hemoglobin mass between altitude camps. And people can use it it's like a poor man's altitude training, to put it bluntly, So you can get really good benefits without the cost, the potential maladaptation at altitude, because not everyone responds to altitude, the going away, there are many other variables around altitude, which mean that without the blunting of top end, there are many factors which aren't like a given in altitude. You get responders and non-responders, and even if you respond, you're like, everyone's different. You repeat the camp's time, measuring the performance variables and how you actually go when you come back down and perform. Obviously, if you're doing a race at altitude, I'd say altitude is pretty important to get used to that exposure feeling. Even just psychologically, your perception of effort's pretty important, and knowing how to pace and understanding how you're going to feel at different altitudes, because everyone also responds differently above certain altitudes, even without living up there. Makes sense. Heat training can give you a pretty potent it can, there's still theories as to how it's how it really works. There's a few, and some are pretty going in a good direction. But I would say that's why it's so popular these days. People are realizing it actually makes me faster. It doesn't just make me feel better in the heat. In terms of performance across the board, it can make you better. So
and that's
why would you not do it?
From your perspective, and I say from your perspective because you read these papers. There's a lot of, and I may very well be one of them, there's a lot of punters. Very few read journals and papers, and I know that just from past experiences talking to you about stuff, it's never my view on this is X. It's I've read 3 papers and I've deduced from facts X.
Yeah.
And overall, the data says it's a gain. It's a net gain. That's not really debatable. There is value. What I want to move to,
there's always holes, and you can always say this could be improved, that could be improved. Just sorry to interrupt, but there's you can deduce a pretty good amount from what's been done. Will everyone?
Substantive.
There's always variables around it, Sure. So it's not to say everyone will respond, or it's complicated, It
would be more incorrect to say that it doesn't help you than someone saying it does.
That's a good way to put it.
My personal, again, it could be, but I can't think of anything. I've fueled the same. My training is off a relatively low base. It's for me, it's the standouts. It's the only variable that's really changed. And it's what I experienced, and this will lead to what I want to talk to next, correlates with what you told me in terms of, so you talk about hemoglobin. I'm like, what the hell is that? And I think for a lot of punters out there, you hear a lot of these things, whether it's a tier or Huberman, and they talk about these things and they use these terms. And I really feel like just a few people are going away and breaking that down, what that actually means.
Yeah.
And every time I talk to you, it makes complete sense. And that's kind of what I want to cover. So hemoglobin for a simpleton.
It basically just carries oxygen within the blood.
So why is that important?
Well, more oxygen delivered to the muscles is key, So cycling is incredibly, we use the term oxidative, but, you can also call it aerobic. It's highly aerobic, oxidative. So the more oxygen you can carry to the working muscle, the better.
The better you'll perform. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the infamous doping era, the main thing that they used was EPO.
Yeah.
And the benefit of EPO was largely that very thing, being able to carry more oxygen.
EPO stimulates red blood cell production.
Okay. So that for me was interesting. That I remember people describing there's so many Lance movies out there, and it was these pros who probably were doping as well at the time that were talking about it was the range of his efforts. It wasn't necessarily the critical power. It was that it could hold for so long. So whatever your level is, whatever the numbers are that you can ride at, it's the duration which you can do that. And that was the Sunday for me. Like normally that many efforts for that amount of time, like you get to the point where, you know, we refer to as blowing. Like I just can't anymore. I can't sustain that effort anymore. And I could just keep going. To the point that at the end of the race, my strongest effort was in the last 5K. Like, granted, this is a C batch race, and I'm not saying I won a stage of the Tour de France, but relative to my ability, I've never finished like that. I've never had those legs, and I could ride it for those last 5Ks. It was an effort, and then I could pretty much hold my FTP. I can't recall a time that was the case at 105Ks in. And the only thing I've done differently is these hour-long sauna sessions, which are like suffering. That's not easy.
No, it's difficult.
And that in my very simple mind, it's like, well, there's more potentially. Maybe this is what's actually happened, is there's more oxygen that's able to go in my muscles so they can function and perform longer. Is that a fair deduction for me to make?
You would need to do bloods before and after to look at that. So, I mean, heat training in itself would improve your ability to ride harder for longer because, heat training essentially increases, like it reduces your pseudomotor threshold, which is basically like the onset of sweat rate. So people who are more efficient in the heat sweat earlier because that's just the response. You start to heat up and your body will start to cool down quicker, more effectively than people who aren't. Likewise, your body will retain electrolytes as opposed to sweating them out. So the sweat is more dilute, therefore it evaporates quicker. That's why in the Tour you'll see guys pumping through bottles, putting water over themselves, and essentially they're basically just keeping their fluid volume up, and they're essentially just cooling, riding. Obviously, there's more to it than that, but yeah, that's a good way to think about it. So essentially, you probably rode longer. You were able to cool down more effectively, so you could push harder for longer. And that change and there's also a cardiovascular shift as well. So there's a plasma volume change. So essentially, the benefit that comes with the altitude side is there's a few theories, but the crit meter theory is one of them. So basically, the expansion in your plasma volume, which is basically the volume of fluid in your blood, essentially drops hematocrit. And because of that drop in hematocrit, it stimulates red blood cell mass increase after a couple of weeks. So that's where you get the response. Likewise, at altitude, that's a similar thing that you're looking for, is that hemoglobin mass increase.
That's prolonged exposure.
That's prolonged, so a couple of weeks of doing regular sessions. So that's probably what you probably got, maybe a combination of both. And like if you can increase your hemoglobin mass 2 to 3, 4%, which is possible with heat training, like that is quite substantial. You'll definitely feel that. Likewise, as I said, with the added cooling benefits, probably better mental resilience, having a better perception of what extreme heat feels like and being able to tolerate it will also mean that when you're riding outdoors and you're able to cool, your RPE and perceived exertion when you are hotter will also be better.
Yeah.
Like think about it, if you're unfit and you go up Segaborsi and it's 40 degrees, but if you're doing heat sessions and you go up there when it's 40 degrees, you're able to mentally tolerate what that heat feels like. Yeah. So your brain is a very good and a very important regulatory pacing mechanism as well. It's probably your best pacing mechanism. So there's many factors that come around that. I think you're probably experiencing a mix of both. There's two other theories.
Done it, I wouldn't be able to relate to this. Like I really wouldn't, but it's exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Exactly what you said on that ride. Because you know me, you told me if you do this that day, I'm going to go do it, so that I know for myself. But exactly what you said is what happened.
That's cool. I mean,
it should work. Weeks. I mean, week 3 of
you're probably going on that branch of like potentially starting to get a hemoglobin mass increase.
How do you measure hemoglobin mass?
Oh, you just basically do bloods. So they'll essentially look at you take a blood sample and they'll spin it down and separate basically the particles or basically what's in your blood, and they'll get like what your plasma volume is, how many red blood cells you have, the mass, etc. So most humans' hematocrit is like 45%, give or take, And
if you increase that, all the benefits.
It won't necessarily go to 50, because that's kind of like what is a marker of like people are officially pushing
doing
some
illegal stuff,
red blood cell stimulation in there. Yeah. But like essentially what will happen is that value will drop initially. It might go to like 40, like 0.4, for example, over the first few weeks. And then you would hopefully see an increase after that. So
because that
that
the body then switches on.
Exactly,
Okay,
that plasma volume expansion drops the concentration in hemoglobin, and that's what then tells your body, hey, we need more of this. And it's a consistent expansion. Obviously, I mean, the foundation to all of this is good training and all the other right things, but this is like another element which you can take on. And maybe for time crunch cyclists could be a really effective, I mean, I've started doing with a lot of clients, suggesting it. Obviously, like you still got to go do it at the end of the day, more recreational clients, you know, like sauna even twice a week, you know, I think you'll definitely get benefit from that. Whether or not you're going to get all the hemoglobin benefits is difficult to say, but I think the heat benefits and all the other things associated around that, especially for us more recreational riders who aren't as efficient, and we are going at slower speeds, therefore cooling down is even more effective, because the faster you go, the more airflow you have over you, the quicker you cool down, because your sweat evaporates, and that's what causes you to cool, right? Blood going to the skin, the sweat being evaporated, that's what cools you down. So the slower you go, the more efficient you need to be at how well you cool down, in my opinion. Obviously, going harder also creates more metabolic or heat. So I think there's two sides to that. But I mean, you know how it feels going up like an 8% grade in a 10 k's per hour versus 20 or 25 feels like a different. Obviously, it's completely different. You know, you're cooling versus not. You know.
And in terms of, I mean, you had suggested some durations to me. Is it like, if I can only afford to do it for 10 minutes because I don't have time, like don't bother? Or is there an ideal amount of time you should be spending?
I'd say 10 minutes is probably too little, but you got to build your tolerance up. So some people, like if you're not very efficient at cooling down, if you go in the sauna or you do an indoor heat session, you know, like your core temperature is going to go up quickly, you know, so you need to probably build your tolerance up for more recreational people. I think pros are just different beings, as I said. So they can probably just handle more of a top end type normal effort for longer. So the ideal duration is, which is Runnerstad's protocol, is 50 minutes 5 times a week for like 3, 4, 5 weeks. That's indoor typically, but I mean, I still think that there's really good benefit, because the good thing about passive acclimation is that you're not getting the actual stress of riding. So I think for a general person, the indoor heat or active heat stress can be a lot. So I think the passive probably gives you the best benefit of both without that added riding stress. As I said, build your tolerance up. I'd say, like, if you're going to do a short duration, rather go right after you ride than go later in the day. But if you're going to do a longer session, going later in the day is fine. You know, if you go after a ride, you're probably typically slightly dehydrated anyway. Potentially not, but you know, then you could have like a 20, 30 minutes. But I mean, as I said, you got to build your tolerance up. Potentially go in intervals. Do like 5, 10 minutes. Short break, 5, 10 minutes. And remember, in between that break, you're still sweating. The key is not to cool down unless you feel like something's wrong. So you got to apply caution with this. It's not just like, I must do it and smash myself and pass out in the gym.
But you can come short.
You can come short. So definitely build up your tolerance and what feels right or not. Like try and monitor heart rate, how you feel. If you feel dizzy, nauseous, unwell, something's not right, then step out, cool down. Try not to cool down too aggressively afterwards, but like cooling down slowly over 10, 15, 20 minutes. Don't ice bath straight away. Like, you know, that drop in plasma volume is important. Try not to drink during, unless like maybe a sip to wet your mouth if you really need to.
Not to drink during.
No, because you want that plasma volume drop. If you're replacing your fluid, you kind of just in a hamster wheel, you know. So I would say don't try and drink as little as possible, and build up your tolerance. You know, if you can do 30, 40 minutes straight, that's pretty good, or 40, 50 minutes total, but like as it, that's for most people, and our saunas are pretty hot in South Africa. So, you know, like the gym saunas, I think, are hot on purpose because they don't want people to sit in there for ages.
Is there a number there that you, so I've got a Virgin Active here in Steenberg, and it sits at 90-ish.
That's pretty cooking,
85, 90.
So if you're going to...
Never below 80.
So I'd say probably a little bit lower for longer is better. You see people coming in there and pumping water on those things.
And then there is a buddy every now and again that comes and puts lemon.
And they feel nothing. But but they won't only be in there for 5 minutes. So that's the difference. So like you got to apply caution with how hot is too hot. Can you actually stay in there? So monitor your sweat rate. If you do a short duration but you've lost a good percentage of body mass, then you're done, you know. I think too hot, as I said, you want the duration. So be cautious in trying to sit in there too long when it's super hot, because I think, like especially with commercial gyms, it's designed that they don't want people to sit in there for an hour, as you'll never get space. So just keep that in mind. I'd say 80 degrees, from my experience, brings out a good balance of like, I can stay in there long, but my sweat rate is still high over the duration. And like, obviously you sweat more and more the longer you stay in there, because core temperature's going up, up, up. You know, it's not going to raise to 38.5, 39, for example, within 5 minutes.
And you mentioned the cooling as well, which is So I should probably have asked you this beforehand. Like, yeah, goes all my placebo gains. So in between, and I don't know where I read this, but someone, like proper hacker stuff, it was like maybe a YouTube comment or an Instagram in the feed thing. It was if you don't have the time to do the long duration ice pods, or if you can't do the long duration heat, the variability between highs and lows you can get away with a shorter time. If you go from extreme heat to extreme low, it creates this like effect because of that big change, and you can get away with less time. So I'm getting to about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes, and I crack, I come out, and I stand under an ice cold shower. So that the Virgin's well kitted, like I must say. As you go out the steam, there's a steam room and there's a sauna. So you go out the sauna straight to the shower.
They know what you need.
Cold, 2 minutes.
Yes.
And then I go back in, because in my mind, that's what you should do, because it triggers this like extreme high and this extreme low, and that's doing something. Should I not be doing that then? Is that undermining?
I can't really comment on that. Like, I don't really know if there's any merit to that. Like, I wouldn't be able to really, it's hard to comment too much on, but I would say you want to try and keep that sweat rate going and lose the plasma volume. Obviously, if that slight cold rinse allows you to stay in there significantly longer, even mentally, that's probably better. But you would need to monitor sweat rate if you're actually losing enough sweat or not, you know.
Yeah. I definitely am. I only count my weight as what I am at the sauna. Like, that's what I weigh.
Yes. It's like, oh wow, I've lost 2 kilos.
I think actually that's a good benchmark of, was my heat training successful or not? What was the percentage again? Just remind me.
For example, 2 to 3, but I mean, everyone's different. So like, I'd be cautious in trying to like only aim for that number. Yeah. I would just start at what you find tolerable. Weigh yourself before and after. Yeah. Obviously, like without clothes, because if you have wet clothes on after, it's going to add weight. Monitor what it is, and track that sort of stuff over time. So go like, how much am I losing? Okay, did my perception feel better or not? Am I sweating more? You actually would want a higher sweat rate as you go. So initially, you might not get that sweat, like a big enough sweat rate, because you're not very efficient at losing heat or cooling down. So as you become better at it, you should see a higher sweat rate, more fluid loss. But your perception of effort should be lower.
Got you.
Makes sense. That's initially. Obviously, longitudinally, I'm not quite sure. Like, I think there was, I can't really comment on that, but initially you would have a low,
Don't know where it goes. You've got to do it, and then you'll see. So I'm doing this on, like I said, a Monday, because that's normally a rest day. Am I undermining my rest day by doing this, or am I aiding my rest day by doing this? Granted, I'm not doing it on the bike. I'm just going in passive.
I think it depends how you feel and how the rest of your week looks and your overall training load. Like, it's passive is not really a massive stress. And I think once you get more tolerable to it, like, it should be okay to do on a rest day, Whether or not, like I said, that's obviously in combination with many other things. But I think given like how much I know you kind of ride at the moment, that's probably not really going to be an issue, It's better than, like, if you're not going to be riding, then, and you're only doing that, then rather do that, you know?
That was my thought. Instead of just a rest day, I'm now doing hemoglobin optimization.
But like, I mean, the benefit of doing that on a rest day, especially the day before, like a savage day on a Tuesday, is that exactly like a hard day, is that, you're getting, like, your systems are more activated. You're getting a better cardiovascular, like you're getting like performance, like sort of touches that will probably make you better the next day versus if you were completely rested. Yeah. Makes sense. So you're 100%. More primed or ready for exercise the next day versus not. So maybe obviously a pure rest day has its benefit when it needs to, for various reasons. Some people, like, just mentally, based on workload, life stress, everything else. We're not really talking about elites here, but general people. There's always benefit to a full rest day, but like some people can dig themselves in a hole. So I think you need to just assess how you go. Like some people, the heat stress hits them hard. There's variability around it, so you're going to get people to respond slightly differently, even though it might work, and they need to maybe space them out or be careful how they add them in or factor them into their regime or what they're doing. Gotcha. Obviously, don't do it before you exercise. I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe there's merit to that, like in extreme cases, but I would say probably don't do sauna before you exercise, because
that heat stays on you for a while there. So it
could be dangerous, so I would suggest not doing that.
I come back, even with a cold shower afterwards. That's like an hour afterwards.
No, you're cooking.
I'm still like just hot. Your body's just like...
After 20, 30 minutes, I'd say probably want to start like trying to cool down, get that core temperature down. So like ice water, cold shower, like just, drop that core temperature, because like you don't want that to be too prolonged. You don't want to cause too much stress. whether or not there's any merit in what I'm saying is, like obviously just for your own safety, especially if it's summer now, it's already hot, it's super humid outside. You know, you don't really need to overdo the stress there, because you're probably going to end up just being pretty dehydrated and not being able to get enough fluid back in by the next day or when you want to ride. So I mean, typically you want to rehydrate 1 to 1.5 times the amount of fluid that you've lost. So if you lose a kilogram in sweat, drink 1 liter to 1.5 liters back over the next couple hours. You know, obviously don't down that 1.5 liters immediately.
Critical to be adding electrolytes in there, rehydrate, revive, whatever it is that you're used to taking as like a supplement.
I think if you just have a normal diet and eat a pretty well balanced, I don't think you really necessarily need to add a super amount of electrolytes. I would just...
Not critical.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, a low concentration I think is fine. I don't think you need to like put in a high concentration, you know, because you're going to...
Smash a sachet in 1.5 liters and I pound it.
I think, that's probably better because it's a lower concentration than like a heavy dose, you know, like because that'll pull fluid differently within the body and probably not hydrate you as well.
You must hydrate afterwards. That is critical.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Whether or not you need electrolytes, I mean, I don't know if the duration is long enough to really cause a significant loss in electrolytes, especially as you become more adapted, you know. But like typically, I mean, electrolytes are obviously important. So, I mean, that's not really
taking it anyway, then good.
I think a low dose or concentration is fine. I don't think there's any point in pumping like a very high concentration.
I don't feel like you have to go and buy it.
Because you're going to eat normally, you're going to have normal food, everything else after that around that. So
from there.
you're going to get natural like intake from your diet, which should be your main focus.
I mean, I can't think about too many more super nerd out questions on heat adaptation, but I think it made it so much more accessible as a thing that you can do to be better. Like you can literally just go and get into a sauna. If you have a gym membership, this is super easy. You know, if you don't, obviously there's these, I don't know, hygiene-wise, I just can't bring myself to it. These ones on the side of the Colt Bay, I'm just like, I can't.
Those are pretty expensive though as well. I mean, like, if you look, like it's actually cheaper to buy. If you do 4 sessions of that, you're spending like $1,000. Might as well get a gym contract, to be honest. Like,
I have
and
a
you
gym
can go unlimited.
contract that I don't use. So I don't go to, I'm not a gymmer. I have it literally just
like
for that
a gym,
sauna. And you look, and you, that's like, and that's what I'm going twice a week now, sometimes 3. And I'm like, at the average cost of a sauna anywhere else, it's like you majorly scoring. But the major reason I have it is for Tuesdays where we ride and then shoot afterwards. I have that gym membership, literally it's an expensive shower for me. Now it's like, on my rest day, okay, granted I'm losing half an hour with Gabriella on a Monday morning, so I'm not going to go in sauna. My first meeting was quite late on a Monday, and it's just, it feels like this major gain, and it links to this fad of heat training. I don't think people realize it's like that is it. Like that is, you can get that value, and it's a real thing. You don't just have to be riding your bike inside of a volcano. Like that's not that extreme. So I honestly find it a majorly efficient, everyday, you know, cyclist or runner or anyone, like you're saying, it's an aerobic benefit. Anyone can get a gain from, and it's just
definitely.
It was such a valuable, usable piece of information in passing on a ride. I was like, I don't think people know this. Like this is it's that accessible.
Yeah, it's like I mean, I really think it is like the value of what you get and can get if you're adding that, or you know, like time crunch during the day, and you maybe on a I think you can get good value. I mean, it shouldn't. Like it shouldn't remove away from basic training principles, obviously, and actually you're riding. But like if you can't, or you're time pressed, you know, like, you know, or it is an off day where you feel like you can do it, you like, hey, you have an hour in the evening and you don't really want to go do anything else, but you ride in the morning, go do a sauna or a heat session, or like you're going to get bang for your buck. I'm not saying now, like, go in your indoor sessions, if you're training indoors only, make them all heat because you're going to cause severe stress. Still focus on quality. But a good alternative to that could be like in your cooldown, turn the fan off. You already got a higher core temperature sweat rate. Turn the fan off, maybe put a jacket on, and then use that cooldown as like heat stress active without doing a full blown session. You know, so like there are ways you can incorporate it, but I wouldn't do that all the time. And like obviously you need to weigh up like, do I want quality or stress here, and like how much stress do I want? What is the benefit of what I'm doing and why? But I think a lot of people aren't very efficient in the heat. And there's huge benefit to adding this in and incorporating it, especially longitudinally.
By 7 a.m.
Exactly. But it's still hot. You're cooking. Like think about how much you sweat at like the top of the climb, you know, like you're still working hard. So it's not even like, even if it's 15, 20 degrees, even if it's cool, you're still going to get benefit because you're going to cool down more efficiently.
100%.
So it makes zero sense to not do it.
It catches you out, I think, particularly for the mountain bikers. You're not doing a mountain bike race and you finish by 9. No chance.
Not a chance.
You're out there at...
Unless you're one of the
like
pros.
a hot pot, yeah. And even then, if you look at the winning Big 5 in Buco time, Alan was 3:30, 3:40.
Just under 3:40, 3:38.
He's still kind of getting a hot part of the morning. Like, I mean, Cape Town at the moment, it's
It was low 30s at the end there.
Yeah. The majority of the field, which is, we have to always remember, if you go to a running, okay, running is different, although actually not if you're doing marathons. Running and cycling events, if there's 1,000 participants there, 50 of them are elite. The value really is for the 950 other people, in the case of a running race, thousands of other people, like you're running in the heat of the day. Think cycle tour.
And you're out there for much longer.
Folks are getting out there, anything after 7 in the morning. And I raced that tour to PPA. I think we went off at 20 to 7. That sun starts coming up, you cook. And then where it got me is these gravel tours. I froth for these long multi-stage things.
It's a lot of fun.
Bro, that's you finishing at 12. You're out in the morning. Yeah, 100%. It's like you're out there in the heat of the day. That's a shock because you haven't done this. So it's a nice, usable tip for anyone that's, and I think most people are doing a mountain or gravel bike ride or races in the next couple of months. There's that Giro gravel route. There's the Epic coming up. A lot of that field aren't elites.
Exactly.
Are people just going out there, to enjoy themselves. Nedbank Gravel Burn. The list goes on and on and on. All these multi-stage events, and you're doing everything else. You've got the bike, you've got the nutrition. You're probably working with a coach. This is a really nice, usable thing to add in.
I would say for most recreational people, just doing it consistently over the year is good. Like you don't have to pump 4 or 5 sessions a week, but like every few weeks doing a block. Especially over winter, you're going to then. Firstly, you're getting benefit, time crunch, people aren't as motivated.
Yeah.
Then you're going to hit summer or spring, summer with better heat response, potentially better training adaptation. That's definitely think a good way to do it. And then by then you've already built up your tolerance. So when you are in summer, you can do more potent blocks to actually get maybe more benefit if you're 100%. Able to tolerate it instead of starting in summer. It's a bit too late, So that's probably for most recreational people, that's a good way to do it. Because most people, especially recreational wise, do a little bit less in winter. Like motivation's a bit lower and stuff. So if that gives you that extra training boost, motivation, mental training stimulus, it's also good. Like the resilience element is also very important. Perception of heat is big. If I put it in your Garmin, even if it's 30 degrees, 35, if I tweak your Garmin to say it's 50, you're gonna be like, oh my word, bro, like I'm gonna cook here, immediately. But if I put it as 15, you're gonna be like. So there's definitely a mental element. Like if your power meter overeats, you probably think you're on a stellar day, Or if it's undereating, it makes you feel awful. So,
True.
Yeah, I think there's a mental component to that for everyday people on top of, even professionals, on top of the physiological benefits.
It is the most universal, usable piece of training advice I think I've ever had beyond just like put the right nutrition in your bottles. Like fuel properly. Like if I think about things that have had the most dramatic impact, it's, a nice new high-tech bike if you start off low with something really old and entry level, like that perceived value is really high. But like actually, if I think about the things like barring nutrition, it's the most valuable thing. And it's like, all the hype isn't just hype. Like there's but I don't see anywhere that it's as normalized as you've just explained it in terms of how you can access it and get value from it. It's always some like lab coat, long 7-hour fucking podcast I don't make any sense of. But it's like, just go and steam. Not steam. Go and sauna.
Yeah, don't steam room.
Try and get your sauna up to 15 minutes. Do it on your rest day. If you can, another day in the week, and you might get some value from it. Like I'm committed enough and I'm invested enough. Like that's really easy to find the time for. It's going to cost versus output. It's like
massive time versus benefit can also be big. I think the point to also add is like, be careful with, like we said, with the duration and how much you add, and it takes time. You're not just going to hop in there and just take note of the temperature before you go in or when you go in. And you're like, how hot is it? Okay, like how much can I handle? Okay, like if people are pumping water on the sauna, for example, like if you are doing hot baths and you don't have any water issues, don't put yourself in there till you cook. I mean, typically you want to be about 40 degrees for 30 to 40 minutes submerged to your neck. I mean, it's difficult.
I'm definitely going to the sauna instead. That's insane.
Exactly. The steam room isn't hot enough. Maybe there's some benefit for humidity, but I don't think it's hot enough. There isn't a potent enough sweat rate. I mean, it's obviously difficult to measure because you're wet from the steam, but like it doesn't feel like there's a very high sweat rate in there.
But if you don't have a steam room a sauna, and you only have a steam room, better than nothing, surely?
I'm not sure. It'd be hard to say.
Must be better than nothing.
Go train.
Better than zero.
Do active indoor training then.
Hot yoga.
Hot yoga, maybe. I mean,
that will definitely be
you're definitely losing a lot of sweat there when you're having fun. I think one thing to say is if you are doing heat work, remember that your sweat rate will probably increase. So make sure, especially if it is hot and in summer, you're taking note of that for your rides. Don't ride with 500 mils for 3 hours because that's not a good thing. You're going to put a lot of strain in your kidneys. So, and you're going to dehydrate yourself. So just take note of your sweat rate and keep your fluid intake maybe a bit higher than normal. Yeah, we might get onto nutrition. I think we'll, if we have time, like we said, but don't put like 90 grams in your bottle and then you only drink 2 bottles because you're going off grams per hour and you're not worrying about how much fluid you're taking in. Obviously, it depends on the duration of your ride, but just take note of that. Especially when you start doing heat work, your sweat rate will increase and the onset of sweat will be sooner. That's completely normal response. So, maybe make your bottles a little bit less in terms of carb content, like 60, which is an 8%, 60 grams at a 750, which is 8% solution, which is 8 to 10 is optimal. You don't have to pump a huge amount of electrolytes in there either. Your body has plenty of sodium salt reserves for general training, unless you're doing extreme events or extreme heat for a long period of time, and just focus on intake, but 500 to 600 mils an hour, for example, as opposed to every hour and a half, 2 hours.
Sure. That advice has landed because I'm definitely the use case for not doing that.
AC Oak picks up with 1 800 ml bottle and it's like a 4-hour ride.
Yeah.
And he has a glass of water, bootleggers, and that's it. And I'm like, just brew.
I had 1 bottle for that race on Sunday. That was my total.
I mean, no, it's like you can kind of probably get away with that because
that is a quick race.
2.5 hours, like full send. You're probably getting, if you took gels, you're getting fluid in the gels, as some sort of fluid in the gel. But if you start hydrated and you have 1 full bottle, depends how big the bottle was, I guess, you probably can get away with that. But afterwards, you might.
Not ideal.
Yeah, it's not ideal. I'd say probably a bit more than that. But
my hydration afterwards was definitely not carb content. No, it was carb content.
There was some carb, eh?
Okay, we're derailing fast here.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay, that is heat, training, acclimation, sauna. Thank you.
I mean, if anyone has questions, they're welcome to ask. Happy to share tons of papers. Yeah, there's a lot of info out there.
Best way for people to reach you? Instagram, WhatsApp, website?
Probably email, Instagram, WhatsApp, anything, eh?
We'll put your handle and the website up.
Yeah, we actually have some good info on our website as well if you want to have a look.
I've seen.
On
plenty good
heat,
there.
altitude, fueling, the works. So, definitely head over there and have a look. Some of our colleagues have put some good work together. So
some said the best.
Some more coming, so.